Hello everyone. A lot of you probably know that Steven Soderbergh recently retired, in a sense, from making feature films. A lot of you probably already aware as well that I'm a big fan of his films. I admire a great many of them, I just really like his style, his sensibilities, cinematically. So I, of course, was disappointed to learn that he wasn't planning on making any more feature films after his most recent one. He may do some different creative endeavors, maybe work in television or some other thing, but he's not going to be he's not planning on making any more feature films. It's disappointing. Recently, since I wasn't an HBO subscriber, I didn't have a chance to see his last film until it recently came out on disc, so I finally had a chance to check that out. And although I did a whole Soderbergh series a couple of years ago, I skipped doing a review of Magic Mike. So I thought, since I originally did this series in pairs, I might as well do a video on both of them. So I watched both of these movies yesterday. I had seen Magic Mike in the theaters, but just didn't make a review of it. It was the film, basically, that came between Haywire in early 2012 and Side Effects, which came out early this year. Magic Mike, everybody knows what this is about, really. It takes place in Tampa, Florida. It involves a bunch of young guys who work at a dance review, male dance review, that caters to women who want to go out and have a good time and watch a bunch of guys dancing and taking their clothes off on stage. This was inspired by some life experience from Channing Tatum, who had, of course, appeared in Haywire and also was in Side Effects as well. So Soderbergh, after hearing some of Tatum's stories, decided to make a movie about some of that, a fictionalized version of his movie. Tatum plays Mike, aka Magic Mike, that's his stage name, and he hooks up with a younger guy who's played by Pettyfer. They call him the Kid because he's the newbie of the group. Also, you've got one of the guys from True Blood and the dude from White Collar, Matthew Bomer. Or is it Bomer? I'm not really sure. I think it's spelled Bomer. And a couple other guys, plus the ringleader, the guy who organizes the whole thing, is played by Matthew McConaughey. In addition to those two, you've got characters played by Olivia Munn and Cody Horn. Cody Horn plays Pettyfer's sister, who Mike gets to know from hanging out with the Kid. They have, a series of conversations, and there's some flirtatious banter going on there. But she really doesn't want to get involved with him because she doesn't feel like he's a very stable guy. He has a lot of businesses that deal entirely in cash, and so he's just kind of hustling every single week, making money wherever he can. And he's got aspirations to start his own company of custom furniture, making furniture out of found objects. Yeah, although she likes the guy, she isn't really interested in getting involved with him. But she's kind of interested. She seems interested, but she's sort of has the good sense to not explore that too much because she doesn't feel it will work out. So the Kid, her brother, gets into some trouble. He doesn't have the best judgment. He's a little bit reckless. He gets involved with one of the guys in the clubs that's stealing pills. That gets him into some trouble, gets him into debt with some bad people. Meanwhile, Mike is trying to put together his business, but he has a hard time getting a loan because his credit rating is so low, because, he deals mostly in cash, or he doesn't have a really good credit history. Of course, involved with all this drama is, of course, all the dance sequences, which is what, the movie was kind of sold on. This is a decent movie, but it isn't one of my favorite Soderbergh movies. For, the first half of the movie, it seems kind of confused as to who the main character is. Is it the young kid who just started stripping, or is it Channing Tatum? And, of course, Channing Tatum turns out to be the main character. It focuses more on him. That's not the biggest problem that I have with the movie. The biggest problem that I have with the movie is the way that it treats the Cody Horn character, the female lead. Forgot what her character's name is. But it's something that's sort of a trend in a lot of films. The way the main character, the male character, if there's a male and female main characters who are love interests to each other, the man may have a variety of different partners throughout the film, sleep with a few different girls, But as long as he chooses the right girl in the end, everything's okay. No one's going to bother him about that. The female main character tends to be a lot more monogamous and not so free with her partners, choice of partners. There's actually a guy whom Cody has been seeing off and on, but it really, the guy just seems a little lame, and in the end, she ends up. Well, I don't want to talk too much about what happens in the end, but basically, the way it's treated is like the main character, the female main character, either has to be in a relationship and then ditch that guy and choose the main character at the end, or just be alone with no partner at all and choose the main character, the main guy in the end. But having dating a whole bunch of different guys is not really in the cards, and that's just kind of the way it is here. Maybe it's her good sense kicking in or whatever, but it just seems sort of like a standard treatment of a female romantic lead, and I don't know, just didn't quite sit right with me. She isn't afforded the same freedom as Mike is. Of course, Mike is not entirely happy with what's going on with him, so it may be a good thing, maybe a bad thing, but just it just seemed like kind of the standard treatment for female lead when the pictures, tends to be about whether or not they'll get together or not. Also, I never really liked the last shot of this movie. I'm being picky here, but the last shot seems to be exactly the wrong length of time. It should maybe go on a little bit longer, be cut shorter, but the way it is, it just, I don't know, doesn't work quite the way I like it. I'm particular about stuff like that, So overall, it's a decent movie, and it's got a lot of good acting in it. McConaughey, of course, is the scene stealer here. He has a lot of good scenes, and he has his own dance number as well, even though he's usually not the guy to dance on stage. At the end, he's got his own dance number and a song that he sings called Ladies of Tampa, which is a lot of fun. So yeah, overall decent movie, but not one of my favorites. So Behind the Candelabra premiered on HBO because Soderbergh couldn't get any studio to back it. So he went to HBO and they ended up funding it. And it worked out very well for him because he just won an Emmy for directing a made-for-TV movie. And by funny coincidence, my other great favorite director, David Fincher, also won an Emmy for directing episodes of House of Cards. So good on the both of them. They both got Emmys now. That was great. I didn't actually watch the Emmys, but I read about it later. So I'm like, oh, good on those guys. Behind the Candelabra is, of course, about the longtime Las Vegas entertainer, Liberace, who wore very, very extravagant clothes and jewelry and live in extravagant homes and apparently made huge amounts of money to be able to afford all this extravagant stuff of his. The main character is Scott Thorson, and the movie is actually adapted from a book that Scott Thorson co-wrote. He and a friend of his named Bob. By the way, I should mention that Liberace is played by Michael Douglas, Scott Thorson is played by Matt Damon, and Scott's friend Bob is played by Scott Bakula. So the two of them, the two friends, they go from California to Las Vegas to actually catch the show. And they're introduced to Liberace. Apparently, Bob knows him personally. Liberace, who likes to be called Lee, takes a real liking to Scott, so he offers to hire him and have him stay at his house. Of course, what he's really looking for is a boyfriend. So the two of them, they have a long relationship, although Lee is a couple decades older than Scott. I think this movie gets started sometime in the 70s. I don't remember. There are some title cards with the years on it, but I don't recall exactly what the years are. But it goes from the 70s all the way into the 80s. So for many years they lived together as a couple, and Lee kind of was Scott's whole life at the time. How the film portrays it is Scott lives in Lee's house. He has all his clothes and cars bought for him. He's furnished with all his meals, and his job basically is what's expected of him is just to be devoted to Lee 100% of the time. And Scott really gets kind of tired of the arrangement after a while because they never go out. He never gets to really meet new people except the people who come to see Lee's shows and come to Lee's house to visit, that kind of thing. He feels pretty stifled by that. Meanwhile, Lee's going, what are you complaining about? I give you everything. You have to worry about nothing. But, Scott's a young guy, a lot younger than Lee is at this point, and so he's still eager to get out and do other stuff rather than just stay home, no matter how nice the home is, no matter how much he likes staying with Lee. And it's clear, Lee's very, very sweet to him, and it's clear that that Scott really enjoys being around him. But yeah, again, it's a bit stifling, and so they come to a lot of disagreements over time. They get sick of each other. They're very testy, and at some point, you know, the relationship kind of breaks down, and they end up having a lot of bad blood between them. I'm not going to get into exactly how things turn out between them. Anyone can basically look up this information online to find out what happened. So I really didn't know a whole lot about it to start with. I knew just the basics of what the story was. But it's not like I did any research on Liberace and all of his inner circle or anything like that. A couple of the people in the movie were Dan Aykroyd as Lee's agent. And Rob Lowe is a plastic surgeon. So another thing that Lee asked Scott to do is not only is he going to get plastic surgery on himself, but he wants Scott to get plastic surgery to look more like himself, to look more like Lee. And so for the latter half of the picture, they're both wearing a lot of prosthetic makeup to make them look different. I have to admit, I really wasn't that interested in seeing this movie. I really just didn't want to see it because of the subject matter, because I'd much rather watch... I mean, watching a movie in which two men make out with each other is not my favorite thing in the world. You know, not like I couldn't possibly stand it. But yeah, you know, there's other things I'd rather watch instead. And the whole excess of the way they live and just the storyline involving the surgery and the bad blood and everything like that, it just wasn't something that that was all that keen on. And I probably never would have seen it if Soderbergh hadn't been directing it. So yeah. Unpleasant though a lot of what happened was, it's still a decent movie, and there's good acting in it. Michael Douglas certainly has moments where he seems very much unlike Michael Douglas, and at times he seems very much like himself, although he's always decked out in the crazy wigs and coats and things like that, the incredible clothes that he wears. Yeah, it's, again, not one of my favorites. Yeah, I don't, you know, if it's... yeah, it's not so much the subject matter. I mean, that's part of it, you know. I'm not the biggest fan of gay male romance films, if that's a thing, a genre. I guess you could call it a subgenre. But yeah, can't fault the filmmaking itself. Really glad that Soderbergh had success with this. And this was supposed to be basically his last movie, at least that's how it stands right now. There aren't going to be any more for a while. I'm hoping that one day he'll say, you know, I'd really like to get back into feature filmmaking because, you know, like I said, I love his style. I like the way he shoots. I especially like the way he edits his films, and I saw a lot of some of his signature moves on both Magic Mike and Behind the Candelabra, the way he'll let the visuals from one scene play out over the audio track of another. I really enjoy that. Yeah, so yeah, I wanted to make one last video for my Soderbergh series, and if you want to see any others, obviously most of these videos went up in 2011, around the time that Contagion came out, but there's a link in the description below to that playlist, which is now more or less complete. There were a couple of Soderbergh movies that I skipped over and never bothered reviewing, like Kafka with Jeremy Irons and Ocean's 13. Never really was fond of either of those, so I just didn't feel like doing them. But practically every other feature narrative film that Soderbergh has made was one that I looked at and made a video on. So they're all there for you to take a look at if you'd like to. Thanks very much for watching. Appreciate it. I'll get back to you guys soon.